But they are looking for a business environment where there is certainty, predictability and clarity. If we can't give that to the investors, obviously they are going to look for elsewhere. I don't think we have done enough as a country. I think individually as private sector we do a lot, but as a country I think we have failed.
Do you think today in 2025 our IFC is still attractive for young professionals? Hi everyone, I've got a small favor to ask. I know that many of you have been watching these conversations over the past couple of years with people who inspire. It would mean a lot to us and it would help us continue to have these conversations if you would just subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Shamima, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's great to have a woman as a leader in the financial services sector. As you know, it's very far and few between. So I guess my first question to you is going to be, how did you end up in that sector? Was it a conscious choice or did you just happen to end up there?
Okay. Look, I think for those who know me, my parcours has been very government oriented for 20 years of my life, where I worked with different government institutions. And my last bit of the government was with the Board of Investment, where I was responsible for the promotion of services sector, including the financial services. In 2015, I decided to make a shift in the private sector, and I said to myself, what is the sector that I need to go? And discussing with my husband, he says, you know, I see you very well in the financial services sector. And I said to myself, it's not a bad choice because I've been dealing a lot with the players in the financial services. But to be honest, I was a bit apprehensive because when I was on the promotion side, it was more about positioning Mauritius. It was more about generic kind of, language or talkings.
Yes.
And when you go into really into what I wanted to do, go into the sector, there were more technicalities that you needed to have. So I was a bit apprehensive and was telling myself, is that the right thing to do, or do I go in another sector like manufacturing or others? But with hindsight, with a lot of reflection, I finally made the move and said to myself, look, there's only so much that you can do and you can have an apprehension before, but it's only when you're there that you will really find. So I started in 2015. At that time, Paul Leach was the chairman of SIM. And we interacted quite a lot on other matters when I was at the government. And one day Paul told me, why don't you come and join SIM? Because we need to have someone that looks at Africa. Because SIM at that time was very much oriented towards India. And after due reflection, I said to myself, yeah, maybe that's the opportunity that I need to do. And I went into the offer as a head of business development, but really with a focus towards Africa for SIM. And I did that for a year and a half, and really that was a good time because then I went into really nitty-gritty of things and trying to understand, how do you make the proposal, what does that mean to be there, because we knew that from a very generic perspective, but not from a very practical point of view. So I think that cycle really helped me to really get a better understanding of, what's the ins and outs of this sector, what are the things that I need to know, and get better understanding of the technicalities around it. A year and a half later, Ultimus was looking for a country executive to manage their operations in Mauritius. And that was really trying to, look at the operations. It was not anymore about business development and marketing, but it was really about the understanding of the business and handling the Mauritius, the office of Ultimus. I remember at that time, Devan was here and I spoke to Devan. I said, Devan, do I take that opportunity or not? Devan said, yeah, go for it, because I think that's a real opportunity for you to move up the ladder. And I took it, and I think with hindsight, that was a good decision to take, because it's not a question about the technicalities, but it's a question about how you look at the perspective of things happening. But at the same time, you have an overall idea of how the business operates, what are the things that you need to do. And then it's about how you manage and how you deliver. So for me, that was really challenging, but I did it with a lot of, I would say, perspicacité, assiduité, and really try to learn also during that course. And that's how I then ended up as managing, I would say, management companies.
Yes.
And then a couple of years later, then Trident was looking for a managing director. And at that time, when I was doing a lot of promotion in Africa, the name of Trident was coming very often. So when the offer came, I said, okay, it's probably not a bad thing because Trident is very much known in Africa and it's a good brand to have. So that's where I shifted then from Autonomous to Trident. And this year will be 5 years since I'm with Trident.
So it's been well 10 years now since you've shifted from public to private.
Yeah.
What is the most, when you first shifted and you were at SIM, what is the most surprising thing that you found out moving from public
to private? I think that was a question. I remember a couple of months after I joined SIM, Paul was asking me, how are you finding yourself? Are you not, is it not a disconnect between the public and the private sector? And surprisingly, I told Paul, it was, for me, it was like a continuity. Because when I was at the board of investment, I worked under Raju Jadu and Maurice Lam. And the way that, BOI was at that time, it was really like a private sector driven kind of institution with a lot of KPIs, with a lot of, system in the way we were operating, and then deliverables should be there. So I think I was used to that, and we were working long hours. So I was used to that rhythm of, working under those people as leaders at that time. And I must say that, Maurice Lam and Raju did give us a lot of opportunities for us to grow within the board of investment. So when I did the shift, it wasn't really like, for me, it was like seamless. There was nothing which was really disruptive, because usually when you leave the public sector, it's like, it's a bit of shock to join the private sector. Yeah. But for me, it was like a continuity. So I didn't felt that, change from the public to the private sector.
You felt the transition was seamless, but is there something that you felt on the other side of the coin, so from the BOI and now EDB perspective, that they didn't realize about the private sector and how it operates? Is there anything that you managed to sort of help bridge that gap in a way?
I think what I found is that, when we were at the BOI, there was quite a number of, the way we were operating and we were doing things was really very systematic and very, very driven. I think at that time, a lot of people have mentioned about it, the impact that we were able to create, because the way we were operating was very private sector oriented. When I joined SIM, I think where I've seen the difference is, one of the first things that I've, for example, that I was asking, where is the database of clients? Where is the pipeline? Right. And I couldn't find it. And that was because, there was a misconnect between the operations team and the business development team. So whatever the business development team was doing was like, that was their baby. And then there hasn't been a real transition between me and the person who was there. So I felt like, I came in a void. So I need to build everything now from scratch. And whatever the existing clients that they had was like, that's the operations team's baby. So that's not your baby. So why are you coming to ask me about it? So for me, it was like, I started from scratch. So now rebuild everything, and then Africa was not the focus. So the database, the list of pipeline, the list of clients, the list of targets was not there. And I think when you look at the way management company operates, it's a lot with referral. So you get referral from lawyers, you get referral from intermediaries. But when we were at BOI, we needed to build our own database of clients. Who am I going to target? Who is my target? Who am I going to look for? So we've been used to a very different way of working, which I didn't find when I went to SIM. So I then brought my way of what I looked. So instead of taking whatever the private sector had, and then it was the other way around for me, actually. So that was quite surprising. And I did that reflection with someone else who left the BOI and went into the private sector. And he had the same experience like me. He said, at the end of the day, I think we had a very good way of operating, even though we were a public institution, but we did had a very good way of operate, and which we didn't find when we moved in the private sector.
Yeah, and that was, of course, it was before the days of where global
MCs were acquiring locally grown businesses.
It was just at that time.
Exactly,
So
around
when
that
I
time.
moved from SIM to Altademas, that was the time when SGG acquired.
I see.
So it was just at the time that I left.
Yes, and of course it was around the time or just before the infamous India renegotiation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you kind of went in at the right time. I'd love to know your thoughts on what it feels like to be a woman in that sector. I'm not going to spoil it by saying what other women leaders have told me, but I'd love to know your thoughts on, did you feel it made any difference, the fact that you were a woman, or given that it is essentially a male-dominated industry, or actually you would just want another leader, full stop?
I think, look, it's a sector where you need to have your mark. And when you look at most of the management companies, especially at the time when I started to take a leadership role, there was not so many women. So I think now we have a couple of management companies being run by women, banks being run by women CEOs. But at that time, there was not so many. So you really needed to make your marks among that, I would say, mannish kind of environment. Yeah. But I think the good thing is that when I was in the public sector, I've known most of those people who are in that industry. So be it from the bank, be it from the management company. So we really had kind of, good relationship within those. And when I climbed that ladder and then be amongst them, it wasn't very difficult for me to try to impose myself or to try to find my way or to réellement mettre mes marques par rapport à this environment. I must say I didn't find it really difficult because I already had that network. I already had that respect from those people as well, because we've worked together in the public sector where we were driving the policy and we were getting input from those people. So the way we were interacting was really interesting. So for me, it was like, well accepted, well received, and I felt that, the words that I have or the ideas that was coming from me was very well received. So I couldn't find like a barrier, like you're not admitted in that circle or not.
Yeah, yeah.
So
you were valued and respected as a colleague,
or as a peer in the industry where we had shared views and interacted in a different hat previously, but then now being together with them is like joining and understanding their issues and their concern that they had on that side.
It's really interesting that you said that, because the other women leaders that I've had on the podcast have said the same thing. And I also, maybe I am oversimplifying things, but I often think that it's our self-limiting beliefs that leads to us thinking, oh, maybe it's because I'm a woman. I think if you take the view that I know my competence, I know my skills, and I will go into the room as an equal, you're probably more likely to be treated as an equal.
And then within the group as well, because Trident is part of a larger group, I think within the group as well, most of my other MDs are men, except for the lady that runs the New Zealand office. But when we meet, when we interact, there's a lot of respect, there's a lot of value about the ideas that you can bring. And obviously coming from Mauritius, where I wear different hats, so they see how you handle those matters, how you're respected within this industry, and gives them more confidence about what you can do and what you can bring to the table for the group. Very often people ask me, you're mother of 2 children, you travel a lot, you have a lot of responsibility, how do you manage that? I think for me, look, I must say that I had the right support, be it from my husband, be it from the family as well. If you have the right support, the right encouragement, I think you need to go for it. I think, as you said, many people is the self-limiting belief that, no, I'm not going to be able to do it. How am I going to manage it? I think the kids and your conjoint, they get to used to that, So very often they will take it as, it's part of the system, it's part of what I have to do. And then for me, it's trying to balance the time that you have between the work, between the family, and between finding some time for yourself. I never say no. I always try to find time, be it it's for my mom or for my mother-in-law, for husband, or for the kids. I try to find the right balance, even though I'm exhausted and I think, okay, I need a little bit time for me. But then when they ask me, I find it very difficult because I know that, I've probably not been around for quite some time. So I try to give the best of myself wherever I am and within the environment, whether it's at work or at home.
Yeah,
but I enjoy that. I enjoy that, because For me, not doing anything or having time, idle, it's not me. Very often, my husband says, you're never...
You're restless if you have nothing
it's like
to do.
if you don't have anything, it's like you feel you're not well. So you're always on the move. If you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing another thing. You don't rest. You don't have time for yourself. For me, that's not really me, Joanne. I always have to be on the move. I always have to be something in my mind. And that's how I manage my time and my life.
Because I've been rereading this book. I've read it once before, but I felt I've needed to read it again, called Atomic Habits. And it's about setting good habits and getting rid of bad habits in your life in order to have a more productive life. And what I mean by productive is not to always be at work, but to be able to, like you mentioned, time with your family, carving out this quality time instead of, scrolling on your phone all the time. And I think that one of the things that I've always struggled with, because I don't recommend that to anyone, it's not a good quality. I thrive under pressure, which means that I need to have the pressure of a deadline to deliver. But do you set yourself goals and objectives, or does it just happen organically? Do you set yourself goals for...
I set myself objectives and goals. I know where I want to go, and I know in which direction I want to go, because things don't come out of itself. So you need to work the way where you want to go. So sometimes it's circumstances that come into play, and then you find yourself in such situation. But usually I'm a person which try to be very predictable about what I do. Really? So I'm not a kind of person
So you're quite organized?
I'm very organized.
Okay.
I'm very organized. My entourage always say, we know what you're going to do now, because it's very predictable about how you're going to do things. But I'm very, as I say, very carré. I'm not out of the box. It is what it is, and I'm like this. But I found it that, for me, things need to be organized. I need to know where I'm going. I need to set myself a goal where I want to go, and I work towards it. I think that has always what brought me where I am today. I knew that I wanted to grow in the public sector to a certain limit. When I knew that I reached that limit, I know that I won't be able to go to the next level, because that doesn't depend on me or my performance. But then I decided, okay, that's the time that I need to move, and probably that's the time that I need to move in the private sector. And when I moved in the private sector, I said to myself that this is what I like to do. I'll start by this, but I don't want to stop here. I need to grow the ladder, and I need to do this. And when the opportunities came, yes, I was a bit apprehensive, but I seized those opportunities and I worked towards making it happen.
Congratulations on the group recently celebrating the 25th anniversary. I think one of the questions that many Mauritians in the financial services sector have been asking themselves, particularly since the change in government, is what next for our IFC? We've talked about it, I feel, over and over again over the past, for as long as I've been in Mauritius, but I haven't, and maybe I'm being a bit unfair, but I haven't seen a fundamental shift in vision, or dare I say, perhaps a lack of vision. What do you see next for our IFC? Where should we go next?
It's been, 3 decades that we've been here. We've done very well what we know what to do. So funds, investment holding, trust. Yes. I think the next cycle for us is really to move up the value chain and to really look at other opportunities that we haven't seized, because there's so many opportunities that we haven't seized at the moment. When you look at the way Africa is evolving, or the world is evolving, I think on trade, there's going to be a lot of opportunities. So what can we do, especially under the AFCFTA, which is coming into play? How can we play a role in terms of facilitating trade, be it through the banks, through trade facilitations here, or be it through structures that we can help with. And I felt that, we've been so far too much focused on just funds. We need to have other products that are much more value, which can bring more in terms of margin as well. When you look at funds, it's good to have, but when you look at your margins, it's very low. And when we look at the cycle that is happening, especially with what the big ones are doing, including us, we're just starting to do it, is the back office work. That's not going to really bring value. Although we tend to get experience of type of structures that we don't see really here, but the work that we are going to do is really the low value one. So it gives us experience, it gives us opening in terms of the type of structures. I take an example of what we do, for example, for our office in Hong Kong, where they have much more sophisticated trusts which are more structured through IPOs and things which we don't see here, but which open up the mind of our people. But at the end of the day, the back office work will remain the same. So for me, I think what I would like to see is probably more things which we haven't explored so far. We've talked about wealth management, and I think there's a lot to do around it, especially when you look at the way Africa is going with the amount of wealth, but we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough in terms of positioning ourselves. We're not doing enough in terms of the advisory work that we can really come and do. So I think these are the kind of things that would help us to move to the next level. We talk about fintech, we talk about all these digital technology solutions that we can bring to the table for the IFC. Good to have. We have a very nice piece of legislation around Vitos, but then the bank is not following.
There's no appetite.
So there's no appetite. So how do we address that? I think for me, if we don't need to go, doing 10,000s of things, but if we can address a couple of those things, that would help us to probably have a different kind of innovative products that we haven't seen so far, without stopping what we do well. I think what we do well will continue, but how do we move from a different direction? And for me, it's wealth management. I see that in trade finance, cross-border and trade financing. What can we do more in the fintech space if we have, banks following up? And that's a couple of areas that we could really explore to see. And I come back to some of the products that we have, regional headquarter treasury management, which are very nice product and which are very relevant for Africa. But the way the scheme is today, it doesn't allow us to attract people. So it's about time that we review some of those schemes or some of the products that we have to make it more appealing and to make it more sellable. Family office, you know about it.
I know.
So we've been talking about it, and yet we are not able to move away from that. We've talked about ESG, and you look at the guidelines that has come out.
Yes.
It doesn't bring anything.
Yes.
So that's what I feel that we are lacking somewhere, because the opportunities is there. We can see it, we can feel it, but it's just that, from a regulatory perspective or from a legal perspective, things are not working out. So that's where probably we need, as stakeholders, sit together around the table and relook at what we have. Because how many products are you going to add to the jurisdiction? We already have a lot of products, but let's make an evaluation of how many of them are really working. Very little.
Yes.
So it's about time that we spend time doing that. Instead of running around and trying to find new things, why don't we sort out whatever we have now and make it work?
I fully agree. And I think that it's somehow linked to a point that our previous guest, Richard Olive, mentioned, which I fully agree with, and I've seen it in action, whereby we often talk about public-private disconnect, but I feel there has also been a disconnect within the private sector, which to some extent has slightly abated with the unification of the two industry bodies. So you have now Mauritius Finance, of which you're the chairperson. So since you've been chairperson, have you seen there's been more of a unification in terms of, a lot of people they didn't want to let go of the GBC2s and then they were clinging on to the ACs. Are you seeing a kind of, I accept that there are very big management companies, smaller ones, so you won't have a common goal all the time, but I think it's important for the industry to be more unified.
Yes. No, I think definitely the coming together of the two associations has really brought more unification around the goals that we are going, and there's more alignment towards where we want to go and what we want to achieve. I think that is already a good step that we have done. And then I believe when we look at the membership of Mauritius Finance, which is extending not only to the management companies or the service providers, but also having now the licensees of the FSC becoming members, that shows that the interest that they have in terms of bringing their knowledge as well into what we are doing, and then from there on have a better voice to regulators or the policymakers.
Okay. I have seen a shift in mindset as well. I think there is more collaboration between public and private as well. Regular meetings with the FSC and On my side, we have more regular meetings with the MRA. So hopefully that will help funnel.
And then what I tried, as a board, what we try as well to push is that, you have several subcommittees under the Mauritius Finance.
Yes.
So try to involve people on different stages. So not only the big ones, but you need to have a mix of big, medium and small ones so that each and everyone has their voice on the table. Because the issues that the small ones are having sometimes may not be an issues that the larger one have. So we need to understand that we have to take into consideration their concern as well. And I felt that they feel that, they're now being more listened. So even on the board, we have small management companies, we have larger ones. So it's not like, it's being driven by only the larger players, but everyone has their seat at the table and everyone can contribute to the benefit of the industry.
Yeah, no, that's super, super important. And I fully agree with you. One other aspect that I think it's all well and good that the industry is trying to align themselves to a vision with government. But of course, the labour shortage is a huge issue. Do you think today, in 2025, our IFC is still attractive for young professionals?
Look, it's still attractive, but I think what's happening globally, and especially when you look at the European countries like Luxembourg, Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man, it's an aging population. So those people are looking for also manpower. And why Mauritius becomes interesting for them? Because they get people who are plug and play. We've known that industry for many, many years. So when they take people here, it's easily plug and play into the Luxembourg. They don't have to train them. Yeah. That's one. And second is the fact that we come from Mauritius. It's easy for them to get a work permit in Europe. Whilst they will take people from Philippines, it takes ages for them to get the work permit. And this young generation of Mauritians, most of them are people who have probably studied in Mauritius. They've done the SCCA, they've done a BSc accounting, they've done law. When the opportunity comes to them, it's a space for them to see the world because they haven't traveled. They have studied, they have started to work here. So for them, they take it as an opportunity for them to go and see the world, to take that advantage of being in Europe and being able to travel, but the experience that they get, and also getting out of the cocon familial, because otherwise they will still remain in that cocon.
Yeah. So I think probably still living at home here.
Still living at home here. So many of them, when they tell me, I'm going to Luxembourg, I've got an offer. And I sit with them and I tell them, look, how much are you going to get there? 4,000 euros? When you remove the tax, you remove your transport, you remove your
accommodation.
There's nothing much left. He says, but I would never have had that experience to go outside. So for me, it's about looking at what's happening outside. It's getting that experience on the other side. So some of them have gone, they've done 5, 6, 7 years, but now we see a cycle where they want to come back. Because I think after some time, when they discovered that world, when they've seen the world, they can come back and then grow into the. So that's a cycle that we are seeing now with a lot of people who've gone for quite some time and now they want to come back.
Because they're probably ready to, they probably went in their mid to late 20s, now they're ready to settle down, start a family.
Which was the time that they needed for them to discover.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. On the other hand, maybe they'll come back with more experience, bringing more skills and more to give.
Yeah. And then us as group, and I think other large groups as well are doing that, we are encouraging for, if they want to go overseas, to let them go within the group as well so that they get the exposure and then come back as well. But obviously on the other side, the flip side is that here we need to find more people to work. And that's where we are now looking for other countries where we can get the labor force. But I think I must say that from our perspective, we've been recruiting a couple of the young Africans who've been studying here in Mauritius. Okay. Very good in terms of attitude, in terms of mindset, in terms of delivery. So I think that's what we need to encourage because those people have been here for a couple of years. They've done their studies and they are really, want to engage into that corporate world for them to get the experience and probably then go back to their own countries as well.
Yeah. Do you see, you've mentioned a couple of African countries, and I know that South Africa is a different beast, but we've heard about financial center in Nairobi, we've heard about potential financial center in Kigali. Do you see them as, I don't like to use that word, but do you see them as threats to our IFC?
Look, I think they're all doing their bit. right? And they are not yet a threat, but they might come a threat to us if we don't address those concerns that we have here. I will take the example of, the MasterCard Foundation on the domiciliation study that they have done for funds. They've taken 13 African countries that they've surveyed and 4 global, I would say, jurisdiction for structuring. Out of the 13 African countries, and with the 4 global one, Mauritius come on the top as the preferred, domiciliation jurisdiction for Africa.
Right.
And what they've done is that they've developed a tool which they call the Fund Domiciliation Diagnostic Tool, and which is based on 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are the judiciary framework, the legal framework, legal and regulatory framework, and the enabling environment and operational efficiency. On all the 4, Mauritius topped the list among the different 13 African jurisdictions. But we're followed very closely by Rwanda, by South Africa, by Morocco, and by Ghana. And when you look at the 4 main, I would say what I would call global jurisdiction, which is Luxembourg, Delaware, Netherlands, and Dubai, yes, they are very well developed jurisdiction with good legislation, good reputation, but each of them have their own specificities. Luxembourg is very much known for European funds, large European funds, and not really suited for the African type of structures. Delaware is for the small VC, which are looking for less costly, light touch jurisdiction, but also speediness to incorporate. Netherlands is a lot of substance requirements, but very much targeted for the pension funds. Dubai is very well regulated, but very costly. So I think that's where we need to capitalize. Look, we have an advantage. People recognize us. It's been recognized in an independent way by surveys that have been done by independent bodies, but we need to fix a couple of things here in Mauritius. And I've said it time and time again, I think we need to fix our ease of doing business. It can't be that we know it's taking so much of time for application to be processed. We don't have a clear timeline as to when this is going to happen. And the processes change depending on the people that are looking at the files, which makes the investors frustrated. We've talked about the digital onboarding. We've talked about eKYC. It hasn't followed. We look at Dubai, someone was telling me the experience that they have in terms of incorporation a company in Dubai. Within 2 to 3 weeks, they've already got their incorporation. Digital onboarding has been done easily. No document certified true copy has to be sent.
Oh gosh, don't even talk.
We're still going through certified true copy, wet ink. So I think we need to evolve.
Yes, we need to evolve. Absolutely.
So if the ease of doing business is not here, if the tax certainty is not here, and you will know that very well with the number of assessment that has been ongoing with the MRA, putting a lot of frustration with the investors, and let alone these assessment, new taxes coming in every year. Solidarity levy, we all know how much companies it has pushed out of Mauritius. Now we're talking about the corporate climate responsibility, right? I think it has all its merit into what they want to achieve to it. But global business companies should not be into paying the CCR. And more also, I understand those companies which are the limited partnership, which are transparent vehicle, even more for that. I was at AFCA last week, and a lot of GPs were telling me what's happening.
It makes
no sense. And then retroactivity of applicability of laws doesn't give the certainty. We are in a world where people are looking for tax, not only for tax, but they are looking for a business environment where there is certainty, predictability, and clarity. If we can't give that to the investors, obviously they are going to look for elsewhere. And Rwanda is more than happy to receive those kind of investors. Kenya is more than happy. So we need to put our axes together. And the other thing that we have suffered a lot is about the image and the perception. I don't think we have done enough as a country. I think individually as private sector, we do a lot, but as a country, I think we have failed. We have not had a clear strategy in terms of how we communicate, what do we communicate, where do we communicate, and at which frequency. Look at Singapore. Do you find any kind of, bad press around Singapore? Never.
And they have the territorial system.
Over the last couple of, 2 to 3 weeks, we have had 2 or 3 bad articles. One in The Economist, one in a press in South Africa. Anything that has happened? Nothing. But we can't be reactive. We have to be proactive, and it has to be sustained. So that's where I think we are missing something, because our image is going down, as we go down slowly. And then competitors are doing on their side. Look at the communication of Rwanda. You'll see Rwanda
and they
is
have
aggressive.
the support. Yeah, it's actually really, their PR is amazing. Maybe the substance still has some catching up to do, but when you see that, they have the support of CDC, they have the support of all these big players, and you just think that it's about rebuilding image. Sometimes, unfortunately, in this world that we evolve in, sometimes perception and image matters for 80%, and then you have to fill in. Yeah, so that I think it's a great shame that we don't seem to have invested as much as we should have in terms of image building.
Yeah. Look, I have a lot of hope. We have a new government. We have a new government. We have a new administration. We've been talking to them. They are very receptive, but we're hoping that we can action fast now.
Yes.
I think the junior minister of finance listen. He has good ideas about what we want to do and where he wants to see the country, especially with respect to Africa. So we're hoping that in the budget there are going to be interesting measures that will help us to achieve what we want to achieve. But now is the time, and if we don't act, then we'll have other competitors that will be beyond. When you look at Morocco as well, with the Mohammed V, sovereign fund, a lot of funding is going to come from this fund. But what are they going to impose is that you're domiciled in Morocco. So a lot of businesses will have entities obviously in Morocco because they'll benefit from the funding. And we know that DFI money is becoming very rare now.
Yes.
The amount of allocation is also going on the downside. So where are they going to get money except for the local money and local capital? Right. So I think that's where we need to play it smart. We need to really address those couple of issues that will help us in terms of going to the next level.
Well, I'm sure you've shared through Mauritius Finance some representations, but if you had one wish for the budget in terms of what you would like to see the most, what would it be?
Look, for me, I think the most is about addressing our image, addressing the perception, because we need to rebuild the confidence of investors in the jurisdiction. We need to make them feel that, okay, we're still open for business, because at some point, we've gone through that cycle of over-compliance. So over-compliance should not kill the jurisdiction. So we still have a lot of good attributes today. And studies have shown it, that we still are the best in Africa in terms of domiciliation or structuration. But we need to really project a good image of the country and remove all these bad perception around what Mauritius is, so that we can grow.
Wonderful. I have a last question for you, Shamima. It's always a bit left field. I always leave one question out there. What drives you in life?
Look, I think I'm very passionate about what I do. I like my work, I like my country, I like to be able to contribute to, the development of this country, which I did when I was in the government. Yes. I'm doing it differently probably now with the private sector, with a real contribution to employment creation, and also through Mauritius Finance to really give back to the industry. But what I really like is see things that I'm doing having an impact, be it on the impact for the country, be it on impact for the people. When you manage people, you want to see those people to grow. And that's what I want to leave behind. So be it for the work, the family, or, having, even with my kids, I try to say to them that, whatever you do, you need to leave an impact. So, and I was sharing that with you. My daughter is very different from the
yes.
others. And she always said, Mom, you always think about, things that will have an impact, but live your life and be a little bit more, yourself. Yeah.
Come about some more time for yourself. Yeah.
But look, for me, it's about impact. It's about what I can contribute, what legacy I can leave behind. I think these are the things that drive me in my day-to-day.
Would you wish your kids to come back to Mauritius?
Yes. For those who know my son, he's been a laureate. And in one of his interviews, he did say, look, he has the country at heart and he wants to come back.
Really? Amazing. I'm very pleased to hear that, because if I'm not mistaken, he's also a Magic Circle trainee lawyer, soon to be qualified. Congratulations for that. And I remember meeting him just before the results came out. A very driven young man. And I hope, like many of the diaspora, I think it's essential that not essential, but I think it's very valuable for someone to get international exposure and overseas experience if they have the opportunity to do so. But it's always wonderful to come back and give back.
Look, I think when we've traveled the world and we've seen things outside, and it's always good when you come back to your country and then you can contribute and you can make a difference in what you do. I think we always say the grass is greener elsewhere.
Yes.
But for me, I think if you walk the talk in Mauritius and you know what you want to achieve, you have a good life. You have a good life in Mauritius, and you can contribute for the benefit of the country as well. I think that's where we need the young generation to think about. They need to come back because we need people that, you know, with a different mindset. And as you said, experience overseas will help them to shape their mind and to shape things. But I think at the end of the day, you owe it to your country to contribute something for your country.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shamima. Thank
Pleasure.
you for your time.
Thank you.